Breakfast.
The Radio Wammo Breakfast.
Live from the New Scientist Labs, Janine Young, newscientist.com.
Where is she? She's in Melbourne City having breakfast. G'day there, Janine.
Good morning.
What's for breakfast this morning?
Muesli with some yogurt through it.
Very healthy and very good. That'll
I kind of have to be. I don't have a choice anymore. Your listeners may or may not know, but you do. I'm pregnant. I don't have a choice but to be healthy these days.
Yay! Now, I saw you tweet the other day saying that you got on some public transport and no one let you have a seat. Is that right?
Yesterday morning, yes, we were heading off to go, and we actually had an obstetric appointment, and no one offered me a seat, whereas the last time they did, apparently people's crosswords and naps were more important, even though they had actually looked at me. They'd looked up and down, and I'm 24 weeks now, so you can't really miss me. And, they kind of apparently thought that it was more important that they did their crossword.
Yeah. Shame on them. And for a lot of people, it'll be like, oh, no, I'm looking at my phone. Oh, no, I'm texting. No, I'm tweeting now. I'm on Facebook. Don't look at her. She's not really pregnant. I'm not really here.
It's actually quite funny because I find that young girls look at me like I have a disease.
She's what?
I'm not contagious, I promise.
All right, hey, let's get into one of the stories. When was the last time you had a needle?
I had some blood tests done at 8 weeks, I think it was, so late last year.
Okay, that came out the wrong way, though, didn't it? The last time you had a needle.
Yes, I know, I could have been much more provocative than that, talked about my illicit drug use, but the answer is no, I'm really very dull.
Well, this first story looks at perhaps making the experience of having an injection or something a little bit more pleasant.
I think it's fair to say that we all hate needles. I certainly do. I tend to whinge, moan and complain, and usually that makes things better for me, but some people genuinely take them better than others. Some people are so petrified they just won't go near a place to go deal with them. However, often we get hypodermics inserted into our skin and we don't even realise in the form of mosquito bites. Certainly in our backyard we seem to be breeding them this summer. They've been horrific.
Yeah. But
we invariably don't feel the actual bite. Now that's down to the fact that mosquitoes have, and I didn't know this before, 7 movable mouth parts.
Wow.
So that they actually, they arrange it in such a way that we don't feel it. The way that the researchers that are looking at dealing with this here are actually trying to find ways of using these mobile mouth parts to make injection a lot easier. They've taken 2, and this sounds bad, people, but I promise it's not going to be as bad as it sounds, 2 serrated outer parts that move, and an inner, what actually becomes the needle, the bit that can deliver the drugs or take up the blood.
Yeah.
The 2 serrated sections on the outsides, one goes in first and it vibrates slightly at about 15 hertz, which is using what they've seen mosquitoes do under very high magnification. So they're actually taking these 2 serrated parts, one, then the other, and then the hypodermic, the actual needle itself, goes in from there. Now they've found that this, on the 4 people that have tried it, and the inventor is one of them, so it's good to see that he's practicing what he's hoping to preach,
yeah.
have looked at this and they've said that it doesn't hurt as much going in, but there is more of a dull ache once it's in. And the problem with needles at the moment is that there's a lot of metal in contact with the skin, and so that generates pain through nerve exposure and the like. So they're saying that the actual insertion of this is a lot better than a normal hypodermic, but unfortunately there is a dull ache. So they're trying to work out ways to be able to control that. They think that possibly by making the needle insertion a bit more stable, so trying to mimic more of the mosquito's mouth parts. There's up to 7 of them, so they've got a bit to work with here. They're thinking that they could actually make that pain a lot better. But for people who need needles regularly, like diabetics, they've got to check their sugar. I think it's 2 or 3 times a day, and certainly have to inject themselves every day. Even a small difference would no doubt be a very welcome improvement.
Yeah, definitely. Now, what about the actual size of it? I mean, is it on a micro scale, or does it still look the size of a normal needle?
To be honest, I'm not actually sure. That's not the information they've provided, but that's a really good question. It would need to be of a decent size, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to deliver or collect anything of any use. It could be that they're actually taking this at a very small scale right now to be able to test it, and they'll, hoik it up to an 18 gauge later on, but I don't know at this point.
18 gauge? Crikey. Sounds big.
Yes. Oh, yes. Some of them are horse needles. They're absolutely huge. Mercifully, I've not had to deal with them recently, so I'm happy about that.
Yeah.
But if you give blood, you need a very large gauge needle.
Yeah, you do, because
Because-
blood's quite thick, right?
Precisely, and you
Yeah.
have to take a lot of it out. They take 500 mil, and that's, for certainly a little girl like me that doesn't have very high blood pressure, it takes a little while to get it out. So they need a larger gauge needle. And I find that it stings like hell, and I don't enjoy the process, so therefore I avoid it, which is bad. I know I shouldn't do that, because I know it's important.
Yeah.
Moving swiftly onwards.
Yeah, I can't say I've been a very good citizen either in that respect. But we are good citizens if we think about climate change and try to mitigate our own influences on climate change. Let's look at some of the latest climate change science relating to sea level rise.
Yes, this is unfortunately no good news, although I finally did have a little bit of good news for you this morning. Most of the time when we talk I don't, but today I did. Now we're back to normal. Unfortunately, when it comes to climate change, there is no good news here. Researchers at the University of California have been looking in a couple of different ways at ice loss, mass loss from the Greenland and Antarctic ice sheets. Now these are very substantial amounts of ice, and it's been known for a while that they have been decreasing in their mass, but it hasn't really been clear entirely how much, and predictions of sea level rises haven't included loss from these two ice sheets. So the research in two independent ways has found that together in 2006, because that's the most reliable data they have for both, they've lost 475 gigatons. Now, I couldn't work out an equivalent for this, but it's a vast amount of mass. And unfortunately, that is increasing at a rate of about 36 gigatons a year. That's 3 times more than the rate of mass loss from mountain glaciers and the ice caps that they know about already. And they think that this melting has been on the increase for the last 20 or so years. So it's not like this is a new phenomenon, and they do concede that they can't pull this out from climate change away from natural causes. But the fact remains that this is a really, really serious problem, because if we do now include this in local models, then that means that sea levels could rise by up to 56 centimetres by 2100. Now that's bigger than even people were thinking 3 years ago.
Yeah,
it's bigger than, I think the IPCC was saying about 18 centimetres. It's a big and serious problem, and unfortunately that would mean that loss from the ice sheets would be the dominant contributor to sea level rises, and this is a serious problem.
it's almost like a slow creeping tsunami, but on a worldwide scale, isn't it? But over many years.
And it's one that we don't see because Greenland and Antarctica are at the extremes of the world, and therefore we have no idea what's going on there.
And this is the thing, and if you look at the NASA climate data about where cooling and where warming is happening over the past 10 years, it's very stark. Over the continents, there's a little bit of cooling going on over Europe and over North America, but right at the top and right at the bottom, you've got these red bands where it's quite obvious warming has been happening, but it's where no one lives. So we rely on these scientists to tell us that it's happening, but we don't feel it ourselves.
Even last week, there was an ex-cabinet minister here in Australia called Nick Minchin who was going, well, there's no data to say that the climate's warming. In fact, Australia's cooled in the last 10 years.
Uh-oh.
Thank you, Nick, you're not helping. And people have looked at it and gone, well, that's the data, isn't it? Yes, of course the world's not warming. But it is, and unfortunately you've got other knock-on effects that if you actually start looking at the other aspects of climate change, you're starting to see acidification of the oceans, and that's possibly the thing that scares me the most.
Yeah.
I saw some data on that about 4 years ago, and it chilled me then. It's not getting better now. The fact that we actually have this, as you say, it's effectively a creeping tsunami. People don't see what's going on, so therefore, it's not that big a deal. So, we'll be fine.
Indeed. Well, go check the data for yourself. The story is up at newscientist.com and also coming out in the magazine next week, particularly that story about needles. Janine, we'll see you next week. Have a great week.
You too. See you later.